Here we're going to take a look at what it's like to build with the Zalman S2, okay? So, I have, for the heck of it, put a micro ATX motherboard in here just so you can see it. We're going to actually use a ATX motherboard. So, get that off. So, that's the first thing you're going to have to do for this build. So this is kind of what it looks like if you have micro ATX in here. Notice I don't have a power supply in. I just want to talk about a couple things before we get into the actual installation. One, once you put this in here, you can kind of get an idea of where cables would route through. Obviously, this 24 pin is probably going to have to come from here or up here. There is a spot at the top, which you can't really see, for your CPU power connector to route that through. Now, some of these other connectors can either go under the motherboard or through some of the slots down here. And for a full-size ATX, you'll probably come in through the bottom or potentially under the motherboard. Now, I won't be in this build putting an I/O shield in here. Notice that one's missing as well. I have a tendency to keep those sealed and undamaged because I won't hold on to these motherboards, for basically the rest of my life, right? I'm going to resell it at some point, as there's no sense in me having 100 motherboards in my collection. So try to do that for the sake of, like I said, selling it. Now, other things we'll do in this video, obviously, we'll probably put a graphics card on this motherboard, and we'll have to remove those tabs there, get them out of the way, as well as we're going to have to take off the back panel. So there's 2 screws there to remove, and we'll take those out. So I'm going to get this motherboard out, and then we'll pick up from there. So this is the motherboard we're going to use. It's a Asus Prime Z390. And we've already assembled the cooler master on it. Obviously it doesn't have a solid state in it and no RAM. We'll add those at a later time. Alright, so we're going to take these off. And the second one here. So I may skip a few steps in this build, but I'm going to show the majority of what goes on. Alright, so I know I'm going to put a graphics card in here, so I'm going to go ahead and get these guys out of here. This first one requires a Phillips head. Remove it. And looks like we've got to take this off as well. So 2 screws to get the first one out. And then we will put this aside until we get our graphics card in there. Alright, now this one is just going to pretty much pop out of here. And the second one, we need cyclic stress to remove. Quite honestly, I usually look at my motherboard to see what else I have. So I'll probably put a Wi-Fi card in and an additional M.2. So could actually remove this spot and the one after it. So I'll go ahead and do that now. That way we don't damage the motherboard at a later time doing it. If you thought you were going to put a second graphics card in, you potentially could do that as well by removing all those. Okay, and that's probably going to let a little more dust in until we fill those spots up, but it definitely won't hurt from the cooling aspect. Alright, so in this case the PSU is in the bottom, which is my favorite place to have these. When they're up in the top, it just it's kind of inconvenient sometimes because the motherboard is further down, and you know, trying to make the connections further to the ground versus having them higher up is a bit of a pain. But this one, like I said, is in the bottom. So what we're going to do here, we're going to come in from the other side. Fan needs to be pointing down. Okay, there's a vent on there with a dust cover, and so that's how we're gonna roll from that aspect. I'm gonna put 4 screws in here once I get it in place. Boom, boom, boom. I'm gonna skip showing you guys that step. I think it's pretty easy to do it. So I will pick up where I've already put this in place though. Okay, power supply's in there. Like I said, we're gonna put 4 screws in it and secure it. Alright folks, screws are in. So the power supply is in place. And let's go to looking at the wiring. So potentially, you know, you may run these cables into their location ahead of time, and in this case I think we'll set the motherboard down and just get a good idea, but never hurts to route your CPU power connector. And like I said, this one's got a cutout for it, which is nice. So we'll go ahead and put that in there. Now, this is going to be covered up for ATX power supply. Actually, I think it's that one right there. And so therefore, we're gonna try. It's probably not long enough to come through this top one, which would be nice. So we'll come through this. This cable's a little, obviously too thick to run under the motherboard. Though if you had a different style, you potentially could get away with it. Alright, so let's go ahead and flip this over. Alright, so flipped over. Now I'm going to drop in the motherboard. Since I need 2 hands, because it's not a good idea to carry it by that, we'll pause it until I have it in place. Alright, so I dropped it in, and you can see this is probably the best best cutout to run your 24 pin in. Obviously that guy's sitting up there, and it's going to be, you know, kind of tight down here. Some of these cables we might be able to run underneath the motherboard, otherwise we're coming in through those gaps there. You can see those at the base of the motherboard. Alright, so temporarily I've just kind of put these cables down with some zip ties, just to keep them from moving all over the place. And you know, this one is not long enough to be really useful to get up here to that guy, but eventually we'll go back and tie that off. So let's switch back to the other side. Alright, so we have all these cables to put in. I've made enough videos showing how to connect these. Hopefully you guys are good on that. We will probably skip some of this, but these are the next cables I'm going to put in. Alright, so I ran the USB 3.0. Cable comes up here, goes through that gap in the back there. You can see the cable comes back through here and connected there. Okay, HD audio. So it comes off of this strand, out the top, around the back, then through this gap and connected there. USB 2.0. So it comes off of the strand, once again out the slot in the back, through around the back side, through that hole and connected there. Now with this strand, what I usually do, folks, it's probably my one little tip I'm going to give you today. I will only connect the power switch out of these. Okay, so it is right here, and it's going to go basically that second row or upper row and third and fourth pins over, okay? So we'll connect that the same way we just did the other ones. It's going to come up through here. It's going to start through that opening and end up there. And I'm just going to connect that one. That's all you need to turn this thing on. Later I'll go connect the rest of them, but you know, in case you're new to this, to be honest with you, it's always a good idea, I think, to just do the power switch until you've weeded out all the other things you could have screwed up in your build. Alright, so there it is. It is connected, and besides putting RAM in here, folks, and this is I think an i7-8700K, so we don't even have to do the graphics card right now, but we will go and fire this up, make sure it works, and then go do the rest of the fine-tuning. So we're going to go through and use our, I'm not even sure what size these screws are. You know, you have to double check when you get your package which screws. These are the ones that are going to work in the standoffs right there. Potentially this is number 632. That may be the size above this, but this is the one that works for the Zalman S2. Sometimes you'll have to use a different size than these, depending on who's manufactured it. But I'm going to go ahead and line up the holes on the motherboard, and then we're going to put at least, I'd say 5-6 of these into the motherboard, okay? So I'll show you what it looks like after I've lined it up. Alright, so a little bit of overhang on this motherboard. Micro ATX, which we had in there, extended all the way out to that row of standoffs. This one does not. So we're going to only be able to put one down there, one there. Potentially that one hopefully will line up, if you can see it right there, and then 2 up at the top corners. So I'm going to use a number 1 Phillips to put these in. So I actually started in the center of the board, that way I can, you know, somewhat rotate it around, and I'm not tightening this all the way down so I can move it. Now hopefully you will come in exactly 90 degrees. You do not want to, you know, cross thread these. Later, if you have an issue, you'll end up unscrewing the standoff out of the case. Not a major deal. You'll just use a set of pliers like that and be good to go. Alright, so now that we've looked at this and it's in place, it's definitely really tight to run any of the wiring underneath the motherboard. Potentially you could get some of it in there and not go through these cutouts, but in this case we're going to use the cutouts. So what else, folks? Let's go ahead and connect our 24 pin. Now a lot of times I will completely build this up outside of the case, and I would have put my RAM in. We didn't do that in this example. This is kind of, I think, as I will label it, a partial build, so you guys can see what it looks like. I will put the RAM in. You may not actually see that in this video. So this is one of those things that's kind of difficult to do, the CPU power connector. I am right-handed. I'll probably have to switch to the left hand, but this can only go in one way due to the tabs on the end of these, and they're going to face outwards. But I will not be able to film this here, so we'll pick up after I've connected it. Alright, so it's in there, folks. You know, you have the potential not to put the CPU cooler in just yet. I like usually, honestly, to build the whole thing up and put it in, but we did end up cutting our hand trying to get in there, so be careful. And you know, a bigger CPU cooler like one of the Noctuas I have, this would be really difficult to do. So consider CPU cooler after the fact, but in this case we made it work. Now when I go to put this RAM on, since I have 4 sticks, I will have to take the CPU fan off, which is on there. Alright, so we've got those connected. We've got to do these as well. And what else? We've got the rear case fan. Now in another video I will do, I will assemble the front fans so you can see that. I do have an existing video that you can watch on that aspect. And in case you're doing the Cooler Master, I have a video showing how that's installed. Alright, so this rear fan, at least on this motherboard, there are, you probably can't see it because my finger's in the way, 2 fan headers down here, and I just grabbed this one. We'll try and tighten this up. We may go with the other one just to get it further away from the graphics card. Alright, so moving on. Alright, so on this side we're going to have a bunch of cleanup to do, but let's talk about getting this thing fired up. Okay, so number one, we need our cable connected to the power supply down there. This switch needs to be in this position. We'll need HDMI. So if you have a another processor that's got an F in it, such as this guy, you will need a graphics card, okay? But we've got a, I believe this i7 8700K, so we won't need it. And you can already see lights in here, right? So looking pretty good. Now, I feeling pretty good about this, but I'm not going to hook up all the other crap, Ethernet, keyboard. What else I got down there? Yeah, all that stuff. So we're not going to hook that up right now. And once again, in case you're going, oh, he doesn't have an I/O shield. Well, I will probably not hold on to this motherboard for a long period of time. So I will resell this eventually, and hence the I/O shield is sealed. All right, let's go ahead and fire this up. You can see in the background, this couldn't be lined up any better, right? So let's go ahead and hit the power button. And the fact the monitor already changed, boom. So looks pretty good. Now, probably says, keyboard not detected. Maybe it'll go straight to BIOS. Let me turn the, we don't need a light on anymore. Oops. So, boom, there you go. And like I said, yeah, I was off. That's an i5 9600K, but it doesn't have an F in it. So let's go ahead and get a few other things hooked up here. Alright, so we went ahead and connected our USBs for our keyboard and mouse, as well as Ethernet. So at this point, I feel pretty good, right? Things are looking good. We'll go ahead and put a drive in here and get this to boot to Windows. Or if you don't already have Windows pre-installed on a drive, then you'll have to get like a thumb drive out there. One of these guys, right? Install Windows 10 on here and go through that whole process. So we're not going to do that in this video. But yeah, this is a basic overview of the Zalman S2. And it's actually been a relative joy to work with in this build. A couple things that I noticed. There'd be nice if there's a few more hooks in the back to connect cables to. This is actually manufactured pretty good. We're going to have good airflow here, so eventually we'll add some fans to it. And this supports 320mm fans, so that's good. Up top you can have 2 more, and then in the back it's already got one. So not a bad case. I think I paid like 40 bucks for it. Pretty happy with that. But folks, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for checking out. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you.